Noah Mallard stood on the cracked sidewalk of North 2nd Street, keys heavy, in his palm, staring at the Victorian house that now belonged to him. October wind rattled the bare elm branches overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a train whistle mourned its way through Atchison's late afternoon quiet. The Sally House. Even the name felt ridiculous in his mouth. His Uncle Marcus had been the family's black sheep, a paranormal investigator, who'd spent his inheritance chasing ghosts across the Midwest. When the lawyer called to inform Noah of his unexpected inheritance, he'd expected maybe some old cameras and a stack of unpaid bills, not an entire house in Kansas with a reputation that made grown adults cross themselves. "You sure about this?" asked Jenny, his colleague from the trauma center back in Chicago. She'd driven him down, insisting he shouldn't make the transition alone after his burnout. The realtor seemed nervous. Noah hefted his duffel bag. "I'm sure. 6 months of quiet, no clients, no phone calls, just me and my skepticism." He gestured at the house's peeling paint and sagging porch. "Besides, what's the worst a dead Victorian child can do? Give me nightmares. I've been having those for months anyway." The house key turned with surprising ease, as if the lock had been waiting. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of amber light. The floorboards creaked a greeting beneath their feet. Or maybe a warning. "It's actually kind of charming," Jenny said, though her voice carried the forced brightness she used with particularly traumatized clients. Noah set down his bags in what had been the parlor. Uncle Marcus had left the place furnished, and everything felt suspended in time, overstuffed. Chairs, lace curtains, a grandfather clock that had stopped at 3:17. The silence was profound, almost textured, as if the house held its breath. "I'll help you get settled," Jenny offered, but Noah shook his head. "I need to do this alone." "Part of the healing process, right?" He managed a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Go home to David, kiss the kids. I'll call you in a few days." After she left, Noah wandered through the rooms, taking inventory. Kitchen with ancient appliances, living room with a fireplace that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and the nursery. He stood in the doorway, studying the room that had sparked so many ghost stories. Pale yellow walls, a window facing the street, a closet with a door that hung slightly ajar. Nothing supernatural about it, just an empty room where tragedy had once lived. Noah pulled out his phone and started recording. Day 1, Sally House Documentation Project. "I'm standing in the alleged epicenter of one of America's most famous hauntings. What do I see? A room. What do I feel? Nothing but the satisfaction of debunking decades of superstition." He was about to turn away when something caught his eye. There, on the wall beside the window, faint marks in the paint. Not scratches exactly, more like impressions. As if small hands had pressed against the wall from the other side. "Interesting," he murmured to his phone. "Previous tenants may have staged some physical evidence. I'll document everything." That night, Noah made pasta on Uncle Marcus's ancient stove and spread his research across the kitchen table. Police reports, newspaper clippings, testimonials from previous residents. The same stories, repeated and embellished over decades. A child named Sally who died of illness, unexplained fires, moving objects, scratch marks on sleeping occupants, mass hysteria, he decided, suggestion and coincidence wrapped in small-town folklore. He was wrong, but he wouldn't realize it until much later, until the whispering started. Noah woke at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of the grandfather clock chiming, which was impossible because the clock hadn't worked in years. He lay in the master bedroom's antique bed, listening to the house settle around him. Old places made noise, everyone knew that. Expansion, contraction, mice in the walls, normal sounds magnified by an unfamiliar environment and an overactive imagination. Then he heard it, a soft scraping from somewhere above his head. The attic, probably. A branch against the roof. He closed his eyes and was drifting back to sleep when the sound came again, more distinct this time. Not scraping, dragging, as if something was being pulled across the floor. Noah grabbed his phone and checked the time, 3:17 a.m., the exact time the grandfather clock had stopped. "Coincidence," he whispered to the darkness. The dragging sound stopped. He spent the next hour lying awake, ears straining, but the house had returned to silence. When morning came, he felt foolish for letting his imagination run wild. This was exactly the kind of suggestibility that turned rational people into true believers. Over breakfast, Noah reviewed his notes and decided to approach the project more systematically. If he was going to write a skeptical analysis of the Sally House phenomenon, he needed to understand every claimed manifestation. He would recreate the conditions that led to supernatural experiences and document the rational explanations. He spent the morning exploring areas he'd avoided the day before. The basement was exactly as described in countless testimonials: unfinished stone walls, a dirt floor, and yes, a hole in the corner that had been poorly filled with concrete. Previous investigators claimed it was a portal or feeding ground. Noah saw poor drainage and a quick fix by someone who didn't want to call a contractor, but when he knelt beside the hole, he felt a coldness that seemed to rise from the earth itself. The air above the filled space was noticeably different, denser somehow. His breath misted, though the rest of the basement was warm. "Fascinating," he said to his phone. "Possible underground air current. We'll need to research geological surveys of the area." That afternoon, he tackled the nursery. The room that had spawned 1,000 ghost stories deserved thorough documentation. He photographed every surface, measured dimensions, tested for electromagnetic anomalies with Uncle Marcus's abandoned equipment. The closet door kept swinging open no matter how firmly he closed it. The latch was worn, obviously. He made a note to buy a new one. While photographing the wall with the hand impressions, Noah noticed something odd. The marks seemed deeper in the afternoon light, more defined. He took several pictures, comparing them to his shots from the day before. Possible photographic explanation, lighting angle, camera settings, confirmation bias, he recorded. "We'll monitor for changes." That evening, he called Jenny. "How's the ghost hunting going?" she asked, and he could hear David laughing in the background. "Educational. I'm starting to understand how these stories develop. Suggestion, pattern recognition, environmental factors." A sound from upstairs cut him off. The dragging noise again, clearer this time. "Noah? You still there?" "Yeah, sorry, just the house settling." But even as he said it, he knew the sound was wrong. Too rhythmic, too purposeful. "Maybe you should come home early. David thinks this whole isolation thing." "I'm fine," Noah said quickly. "Really, I'll call you tomorrow." He hung up and stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. The dragging had stopped, but something else had taken its place, a sound so soft he almost missed it. Humming, a child's lullaby, barely audible, coming from the nursery. Noah climbed the stairs slowly, phone recording. The humming grew clearer with each step, a simple melody, wordless but familiar, something his mother used to sing when he was small. The nursery door stood open. The humming stopped the moment he appeared in the doorway. "Hello?" he called softly, feeling ridiculous. "Is someone there?" The silence stretched. Then, from the closet with the broken latch, came a sound that made his blood freeze. Giggling. Quiet, delighted giggling, like a child playing hide-and-seek. Noah's rational mind offered explanations. Pipes, wind, auditory pareidolia. But his body knew better. His hands shook as he approached the closet, and when he pulled the door open, cold air rushed out like an exhalation. The closet was empty, of course, just old hangers and the smell of dust. But on the back wall, at child height, fresh scratches spelled out a single word: Noah. Noah didn't sleep that night. He sat in the kitchen with every light on, staring at the photos on his phone. The scratches in the closet wall, his name carved in wood by what looked like fingernails. Rational explanations: someone had been in the house before him. A previous tenant, a local prankster, someone who knew about his arrival. The scratches could have been there all along, hidden in shadow until the right angle of light revealed them. But his hands still shook when he held his coffee cup. At dawn, he called the property management company. "Mr. Mallard?" The woman sounded surprised. "Is everything all right? You've only been there 2 days. I need to know who else has keys to the house. Who might have access?" A pause. "Well, there's us, of course. And the cleaning service was there last month before your arrival. But Mr. Mallard, I have to ask, has something happened? Someone's been in the house. They left a message." Another pause, longer this time. "Sir, we've been managing that property for 3 years. In that time we've had incidents. Previous tenants have made similar claims." "What kind of incidents?" "I think it would be better if you spoke with Mrs. Henderson. She was your uncle's neighbor. She knows the history better than anyone." Noah found Mrs. Henderson working in her garden, though October seemed too late for anything to bloom. She was a small woman with silver hair and knowing eyes, the kind of elderly person who'd seen enough of the world to believe in its darker corners. "You're Marcus's nephew," she said before he could introduce himself. "You look like him." Same stubborn set to the jaw. She gestured toward the Sally house. "How long do you think you'll last?" "I'm not planning to leave." Mrs. Henderson smiled sadly. That's what they all say. She set down her gardening shears. Come inside. I'll make tea and tell you what you need to know. Her kitchen was warm and cluttered, the opposite of the Sally house's sparse formality. She served tea in delicate china cups and settled into her chair with the careful movements of someone whose bones remembered better days. The first thing you need to understand, she said, is that the child isn't evil. She's just lost and lonely. She's been alone in that house for more than a century. Mrs. Henderson, I appreciate the local folklore, but I've lived next door for 43 years, young man. I've seen 16 different families try to make a home in that house. They last anywhere from a week to 6 months. She stirred her tea thoughtfully. Your uncle lasted the longest, 3 years, but it cost him. What do you mean? Marcus came here as a skeptic, just like you. He was going to prove the stories wrong, write a book, make his fortune debunking the supernatural. Mrs. Henderson's eyes grew distant. But Sally doesn't like skeptics. She likes believers. And she's very good at making converts. Noah set down his cup. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that child has been trying to communicate for over 100 years, and she's learned some disturbing ways to get attention. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward. Tell me, have you found the rules yet? Rules? Your uncle found them behind the wallpaper in the nursery. Every family eventually finds them. They're written in a child's handwriting, but the knowledge in them... She shook her head. That's not a child's knowledge. Noah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. What rules? Go look behind the wallpaper, but be warned. Once you read them, you can't pretend you don't know, and Sally will know you know. That afternoon, Noah stood in the nursery with a putty knife and a growing sense of dread. The wallpaper was old and loose in places, easy to peel away. Behind the faded roses and ribbons, the original plaster showed through in patches. And there, written in pencil in careful block letters, were the rules Mrs. Henderson had promised. Don't leave the closet door open overnight. Never greet the child unless she says your name first. Don't listen to the recordings backward. If you wake up with your feet uncovered, rebury the bones. When a hole in the basement isn't for hiding, IT's for feeding. At the bottom, in the same careful handwriting, she's hungry. She's been hungry for so long. Noah photographed everything, his hands steadier now that he had concrete evidence of human presence. Someone had written these rules, a previous tenant, probably someone in the grip of a psychotic episode. The references to recordings and bones were clearly delusional thinking, but when he tried to smooth the wallpaper back into place, he noticed something that made his breath catch. The handwriting continued under the next strip of paper. More rules, older looking in slightly different script. He peeled away another section. When she likes to play dress up, don't let her borrow your clothes. And rocking chair moves by itself. That's normal. When she cries, sing the lullaby. She'll remember her mother. Another section. She asks about the fire. Tell her IT wasn't her fault. Fret, scratches heal faster if you don't look at them. She can't cross running water. The bathroom sink counts. Noah kept peeling, his heart racing. Different handwriting, different pens, different time periods. Decades of tenants had left messages for those who would come after. Warnings and observations and desperate attempts to make sense of their experiences. At the bottom of the wall, in the oldest script he'd found, faded and barely legible, and Sally Michaels, born 1889, died 1894. She just wants to play on. God, help us all. That night, Noah carefully closed the nursery closet door and propped a chair against it. He'd photographed every rule, every message, every desperate note left by previous tenants. Tomorrow he would research the handwriting, try to identify the authors, trace the timeline of the house's occupants. But tonight, he would follow the rules, just to be safe. At 3:17 a.m., he woke to the sound of the rocking chair. The rocking chair sat in the corner of the living room, a delicate Victorian piece that Noah had barely noticed during his first survey of the house. Now it dominated his attention, creaking back and forth with slow, deliberate rhythm. Noah stood at the top of the stairs in his boxers and t-shirt, watching the empty chair rock. No wind stirred the curtains. No floorboard sag could account for the motion. The chair rocked as if occupied by an invisible child. And a rocking chair moves by itself. That's normal. He descended the stairs slowly, phone camera recording. The rocking continued, unhurried and hypnotic. As he approached, he could smell something, not unpleasant exactly, but unexpected. Baby powder and old roses. The ghost of a nursery that no longer existed. Sally, he whispered, feeling foolish even as the word left his mouth. The rocking stopped. The silence stretched, heavy and expectant. Noah waited, hardly breathing, but nothing happened. After several minutes he returned to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the old house made him tense. Every shadow seemed to hide small figures. The next morning brought unseasonably warm weather, and Noah decided to walk to the local historical society. If Sally Michaels had really lived and died in the house, there would be records, death certificates, newspaper obituaries, something to anchor the legend, in fact. The Atchison County Historical Society occupied a converted Victorian mansion not unlike the Sally house, but this one had been lovingly restored and filled with the warm chaos of preserved history. The volunteer librarian was an enthusiastic woman in her 60s who lit up when Noah mentioned his research. The Sally house. "Oh my, you're actually staying there? How brave." She led him to a climate-controlled room lined with filing cabinets. "We have quite a bit about that property. It's one of our most requested research topics." She pulled out a thick folder and spread the contents across a table. Birth certificates, death records, property deeds, newspaper clippings spanning more than a century. And there, in faded ink on brittle paper, the confirmation Noah had been seeking. Sarah Sally Michaels. Born March 15, 1889. Died September 3, 1894. All cause of death, scarlet fever. The obituary was brief but heartbreaking. A little Sally Michaels, beloved daughter of Dr. Charles and Mary Michaels, passed peacefully after a brave struggle with illness. She will be remembered for her bright smile and love of music. Services will be held at... There's more, the librarian said gently. The family left Atchison shortly after Sally's death. Dr. Michaels sold the house and moved his practice to Colorado. Said he couldn't bear to stay. Noah studied the documents. A real child, a real death, real grief. The foundation of legend was often tragedy, he knew. But tragedy didn't explain the things he'd experienced. "What about subsequent owners?" he asked. The librarian's expression grew more somber. "The house has changed hands many times, seldom peacefully." She pulled out a manila envelope. "These are the police reports we've been able to obtain. Public record, though the families involved usually don't appreciate having their experiences shared." Noah spent the next 2 hours reading incident reports that spanned decades, noise complaints from neighbors, domestic disturbance calls that resulted in no arrests but shaken families, reports of break-ins where nothing was stolen but furniture was rearranged, medical calls for unexplained injuries, scratches, burns, one case of severe hypothermia in July. And throughout it all, the same details repeated: children's voices, moving objects, a presence that seemed focused on the nursery. "Mr. Mallard?" The librarian touched his shoulder gently. "Are you all right? You look pale." Noah realized he'd been holding his breath. "I'm fine, just processing." "If I may offer some advice?" She lowered her voice. The families who lasted longest were the ones who didn't fight it, who accepted that something unusual was happening and tried to coexist rather than prove it wrong. That evening, Noah sat in the nursery reviewing his notes. The rational part of his mind still insisted on logical explanations. Mass hysteria, suggestion, environmental factors that could cause hallucinations. But the evidence was becoming harder to dismiss. He was writing when he heard it, a sound that made his pen slip across the page. His sister Emma's voice, calling his name from somewhere in the house. "Noah? Noah, where are you?" But Emma had been dead for 2 years. Suicide, after a long battle with depression that Noah had failed to prevent, despite all his professional training. The guilt had driven him to his current burnout, the self-blame that made sleep impossible and turned every client's pain into a reflection of his own failure. "Noah?" The voice was closer now, coming from the hallway outside the nursery. "I've been looking for you." Noah's hands shook as he set down his pen. He knew that voice, knew the slight lisp Emma had never quite outgrown, the way she drew out the O in his name when she was tired or frightened. "Emma?" he whispered. Footsteps in the hall, light and quick, the way Emma used to run through their childhood home, bare feet slapping against hardwood. But when Noah reached the nursery door and looked out, the hallway was empty. "I know you're there," the voice said, now coming from directly behind him. Noah spun around. The nursery was empty except for the rocking chair, which had begun its slow, rhythmic motion again. But as he watched, he could swear he saw the faint impression of a small figure in the chair. Not Emma, someone smaller. Someone in a white dress and bright red shoes. "You left me," Emma's voice said, though the lips that might have spoken were invisible. You were supposed to help me, but you left me alone. Emma, I tried. She left me too, the voice continued, but now it was changing, becoming younger, higher. Mama left me when the fever came. Papa left me when I wouldn't wake up. Everyone leaves. Noah felt tears on his cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't help you. The rocking chair stopped. In the sudden silence, Noah heard something that broke his heart, the sound of a child crying. Not Emma, not anymore. Sally Michaels, alone for more than a century, trying to make sense of abandonment and death with the understanding of a 5-year-old. I won't leave, Noah found himself saying. I'm staying right here. The crying stopped. The house held its breath. And from somewhere very close, a small voice whispered, Promise?